Good afternoon. It is 5:15 PM on August 25th, 2021. I call this budget meeting to order. All commissioners are present with the exception of Commissioner Michael, and Commissioner Krishner is joining us this afternoon via Zoom. Would you all please stand and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the
United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Very first thing on our agenda is civil process, section 1076 in your binder. Welcome, Sheriff. Thank you for joining us this evening. And welcome, Major Shute. Thank you for being here. No, I'm sorry. Chief Deputy. I'm so sorry, I apologize. Thank you for joining us.
So, civil budget this year, I'll just kind of highlight any changes. Salary and wages went up slightly due to new contracts. And everything else is pretty much status quo for the most part. We did take out a vacation buyback. We have not been discussing that. A little bit of increases in the gas oil due to cost. In auto repair, we did go up $1,000 to our highway removal. Other than that, IMC went up about 5%. Our records management, which we anticipate, and everything else is status quo.
Do we have any questions regarding civil process? Any questions? No? Okay. Thank you very much. Moving on to the,
They're not ready yet.
oh, they're not ready yet. Okay. So we'll move on to 1075, the Sheriff's Department.
The chief deputy's gonna explain this one, and then at the end, we're gonna be requesting an amendment to it. But for this purpose, this is last minute, but it's been considered for some time. I'll explain when we get to the end, but I'll let him go through the budget.
So we try to keep this kind of a status quo budget as well. You will notice that salary and wages actually went down. The reason for that is we took the Poland contract deputies and the RSU 16 contract deputy out and created a grant line, which Maurice could explain further. So that's why there's a decrease in the salary line. Reserves, we actually reduced from 15,000 to 8,000. We just don't have a whole lot of reserves working anymore. And we felt that that was an adequate number for us to live off of. Security details as well, we decreased that, just because that's a kind of a wash account. So whatever we spend, we get the revenue. So if we overspend, you'll see the revenue come in as well. Gas, oil, and grease, we increased by a couple thousand just because our vendor did go up a little bit on the oil changes, and we are going to see a little bit of an increase in fuel prices. Auto repair, we went up a couple thousand, as well as the telephone. Those are just increases in expenses. And IMC service contracts, we saw that 5% in those contracts, those are the increases as well. But for the most part, it's just a status quo, kind of keep within budget.
Except for.
Yeah, go ahead.
We've been discussing for some time supervision accountability issues. And currently, right now, we have a supervisor sergeant's position on each patrol shift. We have, with the contract town, 5 on a shift with 1 supervisor per shift. So that's evenings, weekends, primarily holidays. During the week, administration is here. And we've kind of been trying to time it out, and we were looking to delay it, but we knew at some point in time, with the amount of interest we're having in contracts with expanding to municipalities that their police departments may fold, along with some growth we can expect in a town we've been talking to about adding patrol services through contract. We would like to add corporals to each shift now, so we could have 24-hour supervision, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, like we do in the jail. And the stipend cost for the 4 individuals, 1 per shift, is roughly $13,000. So I spoke with Administrator Post earlier today about how to handle this, because it's nothing new, it's just in what time. And we'd rather get ahead of what we're expecting and what we're dealing with, and be prepared for it, than we would have to deal with it later. You know, span of control issues, supervision is very important in our job, having people with the ability to make decision and provide oversight to those that are working on the shift in the absence of the sergeant. It works well in the jail, it works well with every agency. We're at the size now where it calls for it, but we were willing to wait for more growth. At this point, we believe the growth is coming soon, so, and it can be justified now. So although we didn't put it back in our initial request in June, we should put in for it for next year. And the stipend for all 4 employees that would be promoted equals about $13,000. So it'll be a $13,000 increase to the salaries and wage lines.
Does anyone have any questions? Yes, Commissioner Poirier?
The question is the Poland contract?
The town of Poland contracts for 4 deputies for 24-hour day, 7-day-a-week service, law
Correct.
enforcement service. The town pays for all the expenses for those deputies.
Okay. And where do we show that?
So that's where I come in.
Okay.
So
All right,
those,
wrong person, sorry.
It's okay. So those 2 grants they're totally grant funded. So they're not funded through tax, the tax allocation. So they show in our grant section, which you guys we don't include those in the budget process because they're not funded by the general fund. They're totally grant funded. So to be consistent with all the other grants in the county, we pulled them out to be lumped into the grant section.
Okay. So when we're looking at the expenses, we're shown we're not shown income or,
No, you won't show
never.
the income or the expenses for the grants.
okay.
Okay, the only one that you will, and I'm going to confuse everybody, but is EMA because it's half general fund and half grant reimbursement. So we do show that in there
You show that one.
because the grant general fund pays half of it.
And tonight, this extra sheet was put in front of us showing revenues.
That's
What is-
informational purposes, so that you can go back and look at previous years, what the revenues were, as we look at revenues for the coming year.
Okay, so when I look at the Poland contract, and the RSU 16 contract, in the 20,
In this budget at all.
We didn't include the expenditure, and we didn't include the revenue. They even themselves out. So that was taken off the budget, because otherwise you're expanding the revenue, the expenditures by that amount, and then you're just offsetting it by the revenue. And it didn't make any sense to do it that way.
okay, so these other revenues that are listed here on this extra piece of paper,
Yes.
are those shown back here? No? These, am I understanding correctly that I'm showing 2.2 million worth of revenues here? None of those show back here.
What you're seeing in front of you is just the expenditures, the
Correct.
expenditure budget.
Okay,
You will see at the beginning, there is expenditures and revenues at the beginning of your book. And the first page is expenditures and the second page is revenues. We just show that on one sheet. It's not shown in each individual department. Because the departmental numbers that you have are just expenditures, and then the revenues show up on one page.
but why, okay. I'm sorry, I'm asking questions, but I'm just trying to make sure I understand this. So again, we're not showing the Poland numbers. But you are showing real estate transfer tax. You are showing fees collected from the registry of probate.
Right. Because that isn't an in and out, that's simply revenue that comes in the general fund.
Yeah, it's part of the general fund, not a contract.
Okay, and they come in as the general fund.
Yep.
And those funds do not decrease the budget that we need to tax our communities?
Those funds do. For example, the
deeds.
revenues for registry of deeds, that decreases the amount of total tax that we send out.
Okay. So when we were looking at the probate budget,
Mhm.
was that $600,000 number shown? When that department made their presentation?
No, what they show, the presentation in front of you is always what they need to spend for the year. And then you go back and look at what the revenues are. It's not we don't do net budgeting, which is, you take your total expenditures minus the revenue, and then that's what you budget. It's always a gross budgeting way where you have your total expenditure budget, and then you show your total revenues, and your total revenues are subtracted from your total expenditures to get your tax rate.
Do we have any other questions? Yes, Commissioner Laird?
So, Sheriff, you mentioned that you have been looking at this for a long time. I guess, once again, I'm disappointed that it's only disclosed at this time, not even in an email or anything. I've raised these concerns many, many times. $13,000 only, or is there more than that?
It would be promoting 4 people from within the agency, not replacing them. It would be upgrading their current position's rank. There's an existing job description that over the past week, we've been working with to kind of update it, modify it, because there was corporal's positions in the patrol division years ago. They've just never were filled. I believe there was 2 on the road and then CID. It doesn't matter, but we took the existing job descriptions that are on file in the commissioner's office, and we've been working to upgrade them, to modernize them for what we'd actually want them to do, which would be assist the shift supervisor, whether it's evaluating performance issues or replace them in their absence, because they get vacation time, sick time, and we could always have somebody with rank on duty to make decisions. It promotes accountability. It's $13,000 because that's what the stipend, negotiated stipend is. $13,000 for all 4 individuals. It's actually like $13,400 something dollars, but we'll just assume we won't hire them the first week of the year. So $13,000 would get us by. Because the stipend is an hourly increase to each one of the individuals, so it would be, that's the cost, the true cost. And the reason you wouldn't have been informed any time earlier is we've talked about, as an administrator of a department, you're looking at the needs and you're trying to project what your departments will need, and you have to consider a lot of things. So part of the conversations we have with what we're seeing is what is responsible to present to the commissioners. This was something internally we felt, we know this is coming, we can probably hold off, because now with what we're seeing and what we're dealing with out in the communities, and how the state police call sharing agreement has changed and how that's affected our organization, we believe it's in our employees' best interest, the county's best interest, and the public's best interest to have 24-hour supervision. So the conversations we've had internally about when to present it kind of escalated over the past week and a half, and said we'd be very short-sighted if we didn't present this now and ask for the funding to do it now. So it wasn't a slight. As a matter of fact, I meant to talk to Larry yesterday, but we had a county function that kind of took a lot of people's time. So I spoke with him this morning about would you support this. But for the most part, it's just been myself, members of my administration. We didn't want to get hopes up of employees or current supervisors, but we've heard the whispers, and we listen, and we see the need. So here we are tonight.
Yeah, I'm having flashbacks of, I think it was 2 years ago, we added somebody with the DA, we added somebody with transport, I think it was, and the same thing right at the last minute, adding employees. And this is something that obviously, by your own admission, was seen ahead of time. So I'm very disappointed with that, and it's chronic. Second of all, is it only 13,000 total, or are we talking 52,000 because it's 13,000 per person?
It's 13,000 divided by 4,
Okay.
and each person gets whatever that, $3,500, like, is that about what it is? That's about that. So each person gets $3,500. We're not adding additional staff. We're promoting from the ranks. Those people won't be replaced. It's me and you are working today, and now you're gonna be stipend to be my boss. Kind of funny, huh?
We're both equals in the sense of politically, but both elected officials, not staff. But have we calculated main PERS and all the other fringe costs in addition? Because it's probably not just 13,000, it's probably more like 30 or 40,000 when we start rolling in the extra.
Well, I know the cost is a percentage of their salary, so for each one will be different, but that's not in our budget lines. That's in somebody else's budget lines. And it's a certain percent of.
I was writing notes, sorry.
Like,
Oh,
What
the
percentage?
fringes, yeah, that's in the.
PERS, all that.
That's in the benefits and benefits budget.
So that hasn't been calculated, those numbers. So it's more than 13,000. It would just be nice to have the commission presented with, speaking for myself, it would be nice to know what the actual sum total is if you're really proposing that, because it's more than 13.
Not knowing who it is.
I am really proposing it, but that's not in my budget, so I don't know what the percentage is. And if you need more explanation into the justification, I'd be happy to give it.
Yes.
I don't even know, what $3,500, an additional $3,500 per employee would cost.
It's not gonna change the benefits budget, because that's an estimate anyway, and you're not gonna get.
And it's minimal.
True, it just would be nice to have the actual amount, because just like going to purchase something from a brand new car or whatever, there's all the add-ons, and there's more than just the 13,000. It would be helpful for, at least for me as a commissioner. I can't speak for the rest of the commission. It would be nice to actually know what that sum total is, especially since there was plenty of time to prepare it. Thank you.
So again, the request is to add $13,000 to the salary and wage line so we can promote 4 individuals, to have supervision 24 hours a day throughout the county, 365 days a year. And it's an accountability and liability issue, so I'd appreciate your consideration. Sorry for the last minute notification. We were trying to hold off, but at this point, we feel we need to get ahead of the curve and be prepared for when things start to change in our communities.
Thank you very much. Do we have any further questions? Yes, Commissioner Poirier?
So that 13,000, is that not what's showing up on this sheet that's here?
No, that's not there yet.
It's not anywhere. It would actually
No,
be an increase
this
to
is
whatever
just-
we presented.
Okay,
So the 13.2 would go, 1.320 would go to 1.333? Yeah.
16,115. And in the binder, it's 16,092. That's 13,000.
Yeah.
I'm looking behind tab expenditure revenues. And you had a total of 16,092,000. And you handed us a new sheet tonight, and it shows 16,115,000. Doesn't that include what he's asking? Does that not include you?
I don't know.
I know you don't know, but I'm sort of saying it.
I'd like to have the full amount at least disclosed to
There
us
was
ahead of time.
And be explained in a minute. We made a change in the communications budget, because when we put it into the system, the number was there and it didn't show up, it didn't take it, so we had to do some adjustment to the system today. So that's a change in the communications budget. Not because we didn't budget it, but because it didn't show up in as a system.
Okay, so this is a correction only for the
Yes.
communication, still does not include what the sheriff is
That's
talking about. Okay. It's just ironic that the amount would be identical.
Any further questions?
You need a motion to have that?
Well, it would be good
So then they don't have to wonder and worry for the next week what
And we
you're
can
going to do.
adjust it before it goes to the budget committee, rather
right.
than send them a document.
You know,
that is-
we're not, you know, in our official capacity in a, you know, a stated meeting. So are
Well, I
we,
understand, but part of why we present budgets, at least my impression
Yeah.
has been historically, we present budgets to you to
Yeah.
go through on the night we present them and to make recommendations. So we're prepared to go up or down any line you want. It would be helpful to know, moving on to the next step, which would be the budget committee, if there's things you want absolutely taken out, or if there's things you're willing to support that we've requested. And I know it's not official, because it goes to them, then it
Well,
comes back to you.
It goes to the commissioners next week after the public hearing.
Right,
and
and
then
then
it
it
goes to the
goes to them, and then it goes back to you again.
Final package before we send it to the budget committee.
23.
So I move we add that 13,000 plus.
Second.
okay?
It's 23.
A motion's been made and seconded. Do we have any discussion?
Madam Chair, I amend it to 0. Thank you.
Any seconds to that amendment? Okay, hearing no second, the amendment is unsuccessful. Any discussion?
Madam Chair, two things. First of all, there is a chronic repetition of getting these additions at the last minute of staff that have significant cost to the taxpayer. It's not an argument of whether, or a discussion or debate of whether it's a good idea or not, but if it's such a good idea, there was plenty of time to plan ahead and share that, even in the desire to share it with the commission early, saying this is sort of what we're hoping to be able to do. That did not happen. I've raised many concerns for years about this, and this is what I tend to hear from some fellow commissioners is, well, if we don't like it, we can always just vote no. Sadly, as a whole, what I've observed our commission is always being willing to accept the last-minute additions. There's one thing when there's an emergency and, I don't know, the boiler fell apart and we have to replace the boiler instantly, and there was no way to prevent that, or, you know, it fell apart yesterday and we need to add $50,000 onto the budget. That I respect, but there's a chronic, and if we do not actually lay out the accountability of we will not keep having these last-minute additions, we could have even just gotten an email. We didn't even get that. This needs to stop, and we need to start getting information ahead of time so we can actually make informed decisions. And I would also point out that there's a premise that I'm very concerned about, I'm hearing it bandied about, is the idea that we have to make our decisions today. We cannot amend the budget during the public hearing time, which I would hope that as commissioners would be open to the input of the public at that time if they come. And frankly, we've ignored much of the public's concerns in the past, but at least if they had that opportunity, they could. Yet, that premise that we must make a decision right now so staff can make a choice and be comfortable is irrelevant, because this is also getting sent to the budget committee. So unless we are willing to allow the commission and staff to tell the budget committee how the budget will be set, we're setting a dangerous precedent, and we're giving away authority. We represent the taxpayer. We have to protect their expenditures. Thank you.
I would point out that we do have a public hearing scheduled for September 1st. That, you know, will give ample opportunity for the public to, you know, address their concerns, you know, in, you know, a public space.
Sure, Madam Chair. My point is that we're being asked to basically make these decisions now so that staff can decide that this will stay, and that is a inaccurate premise, a false premise at best. Thank you.
Any other comments, concerns, questions? Okay, let's take a vote. All in favor? Opposed?
Opposed, and I wish the minutes reflect this is a chronic issue. I've raised it for many years. Thank you.
4 in favor, 1 opposed. Motion passes.
Madam Chair, do we check with Commissioner Christner?
She is not participating via Zoom. She's just listening in.
Okay, thank you.
I'm gonna move out of your way so you can get them taken care of. They're
Okay.
ready.
Okay, we are going to take a step back to the Androscoggin Saginaw Extension Association, Section 2005 in your binder. Hello and welcome.
Thank you very much. It's good to be here. Got a couple of statements here. Good evening, and thank you for inviting us tonight to discuss our most recent budget request and for the continued support you've graciously provided us over the years. I am Viviana Mendoza, current Vice President for the Androscoggin Saginaw Counties Extension Association. And with me are our treasurer, educator, and staff support to help answer any questions you may have. The Cooperative Extension Association provides all of the logistical support, offices, phones, internet, etc., for the operations of the Cooperative Extension staff in our offices. Those folks are involved in a myriad of programs the Extension continuously provides, such as the 4-H program, farmer business training, food and nutrition programs, in particular for limited income families, and the Master Gardening Volunteer Program, which helps connect our local food to those who need it. Staff salaries and benefits, excluding our administrative assistant, are paid by the University of Maine. We simply provide the local home base for those activities. As we fully expect to be at normal and full operations this year, we respectfully ask you, the commissioners, to provide funding for Androscoggin County's fiscal year 22 in the amount of $51,154, which is approximately 63% of our extension's annual budget and in line with previous requests. The budget request documents have already been emailed, but we do have copies if needed. Thank you very much.
Okay, do we have any questions for the representatives of the
I would
Extension
only
Service?
comment that the 2020 budget shows 45,000. They had asked for 51 something last year, and it was cut due to the
Pandemic?
pandemic and the fears of what was going to come this year. And so it was cut back to the 45. And so this isn't an increase from last year, it's simply restoring back to what was.
That's correct. Thank you very much.
Do we have any questions? Concerns?
Madam Chair,
Yes, Commissioner.
thank you. What are your plans on, with your courses and stuff, what are your plans on requiring people to either be vaccinated to be able to attend or not have to wear masks, et cetera? What medical exceptions are being made for people that are not physically able to wear masks?
Sure. So my name's Tori Jackson. I'm a professor of agriculture. So I do the programs that people are coming in to take part in. We follow the policies of the University of Maine. And so whatever the university decides is what we are doing. So currently, everyone who enters a University of Maine facility of any kind is asked to mask regardless of vaccination status. And that's kind of all we know at this point. It's a moving target, as it is for everyone, and we're just kind of waiting to hear what the university decides will be our protocol.
And in that vein, do you make provisions for handicapped personnel so and people that are interested in attending that, wheelchair ridden or other things like that? Okay.
Yeah.
So what about people with the lack of ability to breathe clearly without a mask? What provisions are being made? Because this is taxpayer money being given back or actually being levied to pay for this. So how are all people being able to enjoy the same
Sure.
benefits?
Anyone who wants to request any kind of accommodation for a medical purpose or any other has the opportunity to do so through our Office of Equal Opportunity, and we have staff dedicated to that purpose.
If someone has a breathing difficulty or congestive heart failure, asthma, et cetera, they would be able to get an exemption for wearing a mask?
I don't know what the criteria are because we as staff members are not privy to medical information for our participants, but they absolutely have that opportunity to make their request.
Are you aware of any of the University of Maine system making any exceptions for
Not privy to
people?
any of those kind of decisions.
Okay, that would be nice to know, very important to know. Okay, I would just urge the commission to vote 0 on this until people's freedoms are restored. This game has gone on long enough, not the extension service, but this game of masking and vaccinating with something that's not even a traditional vaccine.
So you want to hold people who are accountable that have nothing to do with that decision. Just to be clear, that's what you're saying.
No, do not rephrase my words. What I'm saying is I do not wish to give taxpayer money away for a service that not all citizens may enjoy without deciding or voluntarily wearing a mask.
The argument, let's keep
So,
going.
okay, but just,
Yes, Commissioner Michael.
People required to be vaccinated to participate in your program? I don't care about the mask.
As of now, that is still up in the air.
Well, I don't want to fund the program if roughly half the state of Maine can't participate in it, and all the state of Maine is going to be taxed for it. So I'm going to vote 0 until that gets cleared up.
May I make a clarification?
Absolutely.
This budget only funds the physical space of the building and the support staff. The actual programming is not funded through the county. So the programs themselves are ongoing and, to date have all been held outdoors so that we can have full participation from everyone. And those things have been happening either in person, outdoors, or online through Zoom and other platforms. So the programming itself has not been impacted.
You're saying that regardless of what the University of Maine does, unvaccinated people should be able to participate in what you're delivering?
Absolutely.
Madam Chair.
Yes, Commissioner Michael.
Since you're following University of Maine protocols, if University of Maine requires vaccination or injection, it's not a vaccine, to participate, I would then logically conclude that Androscoggin and Saginaw County Extension would be requiring that for anyone that wished to participate. Is that accurate?
If they make that decision for our participants, then yes, that would be the case. So far, we have not been given that guidance.
True, but I believe everyone's required to have a vaccine to go on campus at this point at most of the University of Maine system. So I would not be surprised if that already is in effect.
May I have an addition to that topic? I do know that on the college side, on campus, the part that's a little bit more up in the air, it's the cooperative extension component to UMaine. But on the system level and in campuses, there is a testing, asymptomatic testing protocol for those who are unvaccinated to keep our community safe. And those, individuals have been able to participate to some extent, being able to test in lieu of vaccination. There are also some exemptions. We're not part of those conversations, but there are certain religious, medical, and online-only exceptions that are being vetted through human resources. And anyone whatsoever that needs ADA accommodations for any kind, those are also being considered. So the idea is not to be exclusive, it's to be inclusive while also dealing with the pandemic.
Sure, Madam Chair. I guess I would just point out that considered is the key term. HR can consider many things and reject requests for, a discrimination complaint, harassment, or workplace concerns. HR can consider many things and reject them later. And I would consider it a fair assumption that those are being rejected, given the fact that the nurses do not even have a religious exemption at this point. And they've worked the hardest of all the people in this pandemic. So, thank you.
Madam Chair,
Yes, Commissioner Michael.
I've been a strong supporter of the Extension Service for many years, and was credited with saving the whole budget one year when I was in the legislature, when there was some games being played. But this will be the last time I vote for the budget if anybody is excluded from receiving the benefits of the program, no matter whose fault it will be. Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good evening. Okay. Moving ahead.
Madam Chair, I move 0. Thank you.
Moving ahead.
Madam Chair, I move 0.
You do. Okay. Do we have a second for that motion? Hearing no second, the motion dies.
Thank you.
Okay, moving ahead. Section 1078, communications.
Did we skip the death benefit?
No, that's, oh yeah, we did. 1077, death benefit, I apologize.
Big one, that's
Yeah.
one line.
I
and
checked
we're-
it.
we're required to pay it.
Yeah, I checked it before we, went back. Oh, 1077, Sheriff's Department death benefit.
Madam Chair? Are we limited to this amount?
Say that again.
We limited to this amount?
I do not know. I do not know. That would be a question for the sheriff, I believe.
Is this the death benefit?
Yeah.
It's just you're required to pay that for the death of an employee's
It
spouse
was
that
half-
continues
I
with
think
the
it was
benefit.
half of their salary at the time.
Madam Chair, I move $25,000 to account for the severe inflation we've experienced in the past 20-some-odd years. And I've seen expenditures for for many things that I do not think are justifiable, but this is something that I think this would benefit presumably a widow or widower, and I think we should support them, especially when they're dealing with inflation.
Okay, well, that was 25,000.
Thank you.
Motion has been made. Do we have a second?
Can we do that?
I don't know.
I don't.
I'd have to check the statute.
From what we found at the time, when dealing with this, there's a lot of laws that apply that survivors are entitled to benefits. And I know some people in this room know a lot more about it because they were a lot more involved.
It's my understanding in the law that the surviving spouse gets half of the employee's pay at the time, and there's no COLA or any type of inflation. I know it's been asked in the past, that was the answer we received.
Madam Chair,
We're happy to raise it, I just don't know if we actually.
I wouldn't be surprised if we could. I would figure we would have that ability. And it's certainly under $13,000 of an increase. I would just respectfully urge the commission to help out a widow or widower, as the case may be, and make that a little easier for them.
Is a motion necessary, or is that something that we can add, when we, go through it line by line?
Potentially, we've voted on some other things, so I thought that it would be appropriate.
Just for clarification, the number, although it's under our budget, is historically always just been provided to us, so it's there because it represents the sheriff's office. It's nothing we've ever, I think the commissioner's office does it, or is it the treasurer's office? We get it in our budget like you do. I've never really looked into it much. So I'm not the expert in this.
All right. Yes, Commissioner Michael.
If we decide to raise that to, say, 25,000, we could probably create a separate line that's just in the county budget for additional benefits, which would activate, which would be activated by the administrator if there was a death. I'm saying, if we want to do it, we can probably find a way, is my guess.
Yeah. I'm wondering if, are we gonna have to take, money from another program to add to this one?
Sure, Madam Chair, I highly doubt that we'll make money for other causes. I would urge the commission to spend $7,100 and some odd dollars, or et cetera, $7,050 or whatever to adjust for inflation. We've given $5,000 pay raises to staff via the ERA money, and I would say that someone who's lost a loved one as a result of serving the line of duty would be well justified in receiving an adjustment for inflation.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Ware. Commissioner Boyd?
Thank you.
Just to clarify, my understanding, the $5,000 was a one-time thing and not a salary raise. But what you're talking about here, I guess I'm not familiar with this account. So this was, we lost someone in the sheriff's department, and this is what we've been paying that one individual spouse, is that correct?
Yes.
So if we change this year, are we saying we're going to change this on an ongoing basis? And are we also, if something, sadly, if something else happens to someone else in the sheriff's department, is this, this could increase next year, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And at that point, it'll be half of that individual's salary.
That's correct.
Deserves $5,000 more also, correct? I just want to make sure that we understand what we're setting up for precedent, because to me, this kind of opens a can of worms in going forward. I'm not against it per se, but I just want to make sure that we're thinking about this objectively and not emotionally. Because you are saying you want to add, a 30% increase this year. Are we giving her a 30% increase next year also, or him, or her? I mean, I just, this can be quite dramatic. And I would just want to make sure that we're approaching this in a viable way. Not that I'm against it, but I just, what are we setting up? I guess, that's my concerns as I listen to this conversation. I understand it's been the same amount. I don't know how long it's been the same amount. I don't know.
I would assume this is 2004 or 5.
4 or 5.
Six.
6.
2006.
2006.
It probably went into effect in 2007, they died November of 2000.
Yeah, I'm in favor of this idea in theory. My concern is that we're missing something and that it's going to create a problem later. So I would like to have the opportunity to, look into it further and discuss it with, those who are familiar with, statute and, the budget committee. What's their opinion? Is it viable? Is it feasible?
I guess I would just urge us to consider, I can guarantee if we have somebody walk in asking for $5,000 or $7,000 for a flying a balloon festival or a three-legged cougar, we'll find money to spend on a three-legged cougar flag and then a four-legged cougar flag because we didn't do our homework the first time. Taxpayer money. So I guess I would, and a parade. So I guess this doesn't seem like much. There's so many programs that we're willing to spend money on, and frankly, for far less benefit than what I believe a widow is due. And it's a sad thing that we have to debate this and worry about the consequences when we rarely consider the consequences of any of the other expenditures we make. So thank you.
Okay, do we have any other comments?
I'm in favor of this as well, principal. And if we don't run into the buzzsaw that says it has to be half the salary and those kind of complications, I think you alluded to this as well, then I might want to move forward on it. And I'd like to see this tabled for one meeting. We'll ask some more questions, and I so move that.
Okay, a motion to table has been, Commissioner Michael has made a motion to table. Do we have a second? Okay.
To get more information.
Would you like the statute?
Do we have any?
It's Title 30A, Section 352. It basically reads, if a sheriff or a deputy sheriff dies as a result of injury received in the line of duty, the spouse or, if none, the minor children, shall receive a pension equal to half the pay of the sheriff or deputy at the time of the death, but in no case may the pension be less than $1,000 annually. It doesn't say that you can increase it, it just says that's what you get.
Has to be at least half.
Mhm.
Yes, half.
Okay, a motion has been made and seconded to table the motion. Do we have any discussion?
Madam Chair, the motion to table is not debatable.
Oh, it's not debatable. Thank you, Commissioner O'Leary. Okay, all in favor?
Oh, sorry.
Opposed. I am very concerned. I wish the minister reflected I'm opposed because I'm concerned that we'll have information show up or even legal information show up that will somehow say this is a bad idea, as is the case typically. Thank you.
Tabled until the next meeting. Okay. Section 1078, communications. You will find the details of such along with your handouts, not in your binder.
Yes, you would. You was passed out a new, and the reason for that is that the, line 7,300 was shown in the, as we did the budget, it was put in and it didn't show up, the whole line didn't show up in the budget, so we had to, Clarice had to do some, adjustment today to make that line show up, and so that added $20,000 to the original budget you had.
Thank you very much, sir.
So, this budget is, they're all pretty much status quo. This one, the only change you'll see that you might have an interest in is, I think you know, for years, I've been trying to get off the borrowing and set up capital accounts. I thought cars would be the first avenue we'd be able to do that with, but that's not working out too well. But in this budget, you know that we've made, some of you know, and have been part of making significant investments into our radio communications system as well as the dispatch center. Well, that stuff has lifespans, and we had debated when we were building the budget, do we start replacing it now and borrow? Or do we take where payments have expired, take a portion of that and start setting up capital accounts? So what we have in here is a line to create a capital account over anticipation that some of, whether it's the internal stuff in the dispatch center or external pieces out in the communities, that, you know, that will need to be replaced, we've budgeted to create the capital account. So hopefully it builds, and then when we can see things are starting to fail, we can come back through the budget process to spend out of the capital account to replace whatever capital equipment is either in the center or in the field to replace. So the money would obviously be in an account, it would be a newly established account, but the authority or the authorization to spend it would be based on commissioner's action that we would bring to you, which we would prefer doing because we believe there's savings over time. We believe we have enough time to build up amounts over the next 2-3 years that the equipment should hopefully make it, so we can actually buy new equipment cash as opposed to taking out loans. But where I'm sure you're concerned, the money would be in an account. We couldn't spend it without authorization from you. And you could reduce the line by, was it $20,000? You could reduce the budget by $20,000. But the flip side of that is in a year, 2 years, or 3 years, we'd have to come back and ask you to take out a loan to replace something that's failing at $150,000 plus interest. So we think it's the best way to go. It's something we'd like to do with a lot of the other accounts and capital equipment we purchase. We just haven't been in a greater position as we are in dispatch to be able to do that. So that's the major change. And any questions about it in particular, or concerns you have, Marty's here to answer it.
Awesome.
And I think it's only a $34,000, I don't want to say only, but the increase to the budget is $34,000 overall. So, and that's salaries, wages, and bringing in a new holiday.
Okay. Do we have any questions regarding communications? Commissioner Poirier.
So the communication budget is the 911 call center, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. So again, I'm going to go back to revenues that we receive from the towns. That is not shown on this.
Not reflected in this.
It's the commissioners.
It's shown back under the revenue, under that revenue page, with all of the other revenues.
So, okay.
So how this works is the commissioners, they're set for a number of years by the commissioners, the rates are set, and it's all administrated through, we work with Larry to do it. When the contracts expire, we do a yearly renewal. If the rates don't change by commissioner's action, because they're the rates you set. It's just
They've been set for they normally have been set for 3 years.
when we sign 1-year contracts. I don't know when the next time, when does the 3 years expire, do you know? Because I know that's where Commissioner Poirier is going, based on conversations, next year?
Is it next year, Mike? Yeah.
We are set, we have a rate set for 2022,
Yes.
and
So 2023 is the year. Next year, you'll end up having to set the rate for 2023, because before we have them sign the agreements for us to perform their PSAP or dispatch services, you need to set your rates. So next year sometime, the commission will be presented with the opportunity to make adjustments to the rates. Because you have PSAP rates, and you have fire dispatch rates, and you have police dispatch rates, and they're all different. But that's all with your thing.
And if we continue with the idea of combining Lewiston Auburn area within this budget, how is that going to work out in '22? I guess that's where I'm going with all of this.
You would have, we've already decided that the July 1st, it was too quick. We're still waiting to hear back from attorneys regarding union issues and things like that. So any proposal would go, at the soonest would be January 1st, 2023. If it were to go as proposed, the agreements would just be gone because it would be done through taxation. If the commissioners decide they want to move forward with it, but would rather do a different funding formula, that would be up to the commissioners as well, and then that's when the contracts would come back into play. I would imagine. I mean, I'm just working with you here to provide you answers, to give you more questions, probably.
Well, the current contracts are calendar year. So,
Some of them, it's when they came on. They weren't all here. We had to kind of bring people back in to bring in revenue to offset the costs. Because whether they were getting dispatched by us or not, we had a PSAP and dispatch center here. It was advantageous for us to go out and bring people in like Wales and Sabatis and Green, Turner. No, Turner was always here. But we had to bring in agencies to explain you're already paying it through taxes. We provide a good service. The per capita revenue will offset your taxes anyway. It made sense, and that's where we are today. Some of them came on at different times, though.
okay, so we have 12 communities that are paying on these contracts, is that correct?
11.
11, excuse me, 11. And the contracts they sign are expiring when exactly?
December of 31st of 2022.
December 22. And what we're looking at is to combine the two, everybody together, starting January 23rd, is that what you're saying now?
Well, you have to pick a date to prepare for or to gear things towards. So originally we said, well, July 1st, but here we are presenting a budget without any consideration for that. So your next opportunity would be January 1st. So yeah.
So the original goal was July
The
of
original goal-
22.
July 22, yes.
You've now kicked it to January 23.
Exactly.
That is why I'm not seeing this in the budget tonight.
Right. And if you were gonna see it, you would have probably had to agree to certain things far before we were here, which obviously we couldn't do. I think people's vacations got in the way, and then questions arose. So, you know, some of which required an attorney. So now, the soonest you could hope for, in a figure of speech, would be January 2023. So that none of that is reflected in here, because it's not possible.
Do we have any other questions?
So, Madam Chair, so we are not allocating any funds at this time for the merger of the communication centers?
Haven't spent a dime other than our time and our effort and some paper, but nope, nothing budgeted.
Yeah, and some legal fees, but yeah, okay.
No legal fees.
Defending the chair's actions, but the question I've got, Chairwoman Christopher, question I have is the $20,000, I'm very concerned we're going to add $20,000. With all due respect, I know you're saying that that will be up to the commission, how those are allocated. It seems to me that we had a discussion last year to set aside $150,000 for the body scanner for the jail. And it was bandied about the idea that that would be still up to us as a commission to vote on. And then it turned out, no, that would actually be under the purview of the administrator once it's budgeted. So I'm asking, where in the charter does it specify that we as the commissioners will still have that oversight ability for the taxpayer if money is put aside in a reserve account?
To get things authorized for expenditures, we always come to the commissioners. So here I am telling you what we're gonna buy. I just did it with patrol, I'm gonna do it in the jail. you have to approve that as part of our budget process so we can make the purchase. Now, once it's approved, so if next year I'm sitting here and saying, we need a $40,000 console, but we want to take it out of our capital account and we'll have $40,000 in it, you'll say yes, or you'll say nope, you're waiting another year. And that's what I do. If you say yes, we go to purchase it, and the county administrator approves the purchase, and the treasurer does what the treasurer does, and then it's done. If you say no, they say, haha, Eric, you need a piece of equipment, and it's in this account, but the commission said you can't spend it. And that's how the process works.
Okay, so I'm trying to understand then, we have the commissioner's budget, and part of that is professional, which is legal fees. There was a lawsuit enjoined against the state, and to my knowledge, the commission never took a vote to authorize the expenditure of those funds to sue the state of Maine. The lawsuit against the state of Maine for housing inmates, or keeping them here instead of sending them to the Maine State Prison where they belonged. And so I'm trying to understand how if that didn't require a county commission vote, how we will be able to protect the taxpayer on the $20,000 that you're asking to be set aside in reserve.
It's a different budget. In that budget, which was a corrections budget, he has a legal line for attorney's fees. So we had the authorization based on the budget set the year before in the corrections budget, nothing to do with dispatch. He had a legal line, and we had the money in there to cover the expense. Now, to cover the expense as far as actually suing them, the agreement was brought before the commission, and what we agreed to is there would be no upfront charge and no charge at all. In the event that we were successful in the suit, he would get a larger portion of whatever we recover. So once we looked into, we used the money out of legal in the corrections budget, and I'm sorry to take up your time. Okay. So we used the money to employ the lawyer out of the corrections budget, out of the legal fee line that you authorize, to do the research on what our opportunities were. Once that was spelled out to us, we wrote out the check for $1,800. He was paid out of an authorized line. Once we made the decision to sue, we came before the commissioners and we had options. We could either pay a lot of money to the attorney and take our chances, or we could have the attorney do it on agreement that once it's resolved, if we're successful, he gets a larger percentage of the funds we recover. If we're not successful, he's out all of his time and money. And he's actually, I think he even paid, well, I don't know now, but I think he even paid for the fees for the service, because I don't remember ever getting any bills.
Okay, so Chair, so was that in executive session or an open session? Our authorization. It's actually a very valid point.
Your authorization was probably an executive session, but the lawsuit is now public because it's been filed. So I just didn't violate any executive session rules, if that's the point you're trying to make.
My point is more along the lines, Sheriff, that you can choose to disclose stuff in executive session when you wish, even when I, as a commissioner, have been bound and
Can we
gagged by the
please stay
administrator.
focused on the matter
By
at
the
hand?
chairwoman, pardon me, not the administrator. Thank you.
Let's stay focused.
This is actually quite in focus, Madam Chair.
Keep going, harping on the same question. But now I'm going to the revenue page. And where do I see income for communication?
Oh, revenues. You will see it under dispatch services, 9345. $284,601, about halfway down.
So, okay. So that's what we're receiving from the towns, from the contract. It's costing us $859,000
That's correct.
to run the department, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So, along with the 911 call center, what part of that would we be incurring if we did not have a 911 call center?
Still have a dispatch center.
What do you, I'm sorry, you're asking about revenue. I thought you were talking to Larry. I don't know how.
Okay,
If you didn't have the 911 center, you'd still have a dispatch center, but you'd lose a significant amount of revenue.
okay.
And I don't know why you'd do away with the 911 center, because not only are we dependent on it, but so are all the small towns we provide the service to.
Oh, no, I have no plans on doing away with it.
Okay.
I'm just trying to understand. You presented us a sheet where you showed us the cost of running the call center.
Larry.
Larry did.
It was 3.82% of each rate.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you'd have to multiply 3.82 times each rate to cover the cost of the dispatch center
Right.
without
Of
taxation.
This year's cost. of the
This year's
current year.
cost.
Okay. All right,
I'm sorry I had missed, I was kind of taking a break for a minute.
okay.
Do we have any further questions for the sheriff?
Madam Chair, I think we should remove that line down to 0. Once again, we get the information right at the last minute. I respectfully request I make a motion for 0 for the reserve line.
Okay, a motion has been made. Do we have a second? Hearing none? Hearing none, there is no, the motion dies.
Could I also explain that the error of omission wasn't by any means our fault? That was an error on the system that was caught today, but this has been in there since June or whenever we made this budget and presented to
That's the
Larry.
system that the
software.
treasurer wants to change, so that we have a system that's more user-friendly.
You told us all about it, how difficult it is to enter information.
That line is simply an insurance policy for the investment you've made over the last 5 years. I just want to protect it and make sure it's up to date.
Okay. Item 1050, jail support of prisoners.
Hi. The jail budget is this year, our status quo budget. I think it's a 1% increase over last year.
Actually, less than one.
Less than one with revenues, all right. Less than 1%. I'm sure you've had time to review it. I can answer any of your questions. There's nothing really new in it, other than some capital items that we talked about. I was being generous to 1% then.
Should have replaced the radio system.
Ship's already sailed.
I know.
Madam Chair? Just wanting to understand whether we are going to be requiring inmates to be injected if the governor decides, or Department of Correction decides to mandate it, as the governor has decided to mandate with the nurses. Will we then force them to receive an injection or vaccine?
Inmates?
Yes.
No, we're not forcing anybody.
I don't think that's gonna happen.
Even if required to by the governor or by Department of Corrections or Health and Human Services, whichever arm is making the nurse. It's a valid question. Are we?
I've answered it for a year and a half, and it's not gonna change. It's a personal decision, just like when we have people that go on hunger strikes, we don't force feed them. We're not gonna force a vaccination and cause more damage and accusations towards law enforcement, but no, it's.
No, that's not meant as an accusation. I'm just wanting to clarify, but because, my grave concern, though, is that the governor claims the authority, which she does not have under Article 3, Section 1 and 2 of the Maine State Constitution, to force people to do things. I want to make sure we're not going to stand by if she does require it. That's my concern.
Nothing of the sort of a forced vaccination.
I respectfully know, but the governor tends to not reveal things until we hear it. It'll be tomorrow. It'll be everybody's masked, everybody's vaccinated, everybody stays home, and it'll be tomorrow. We don't, and I feel for you and your staff, you deal with whatever throws down. So I'm just concerned that
Madam
if
Chair?
that does come up, that we're protecting the rights of the inmates as well. I realize you don't have any desire to do so. I'm saying I'm concerned it's coming down the pike, and I want to make sure we don't allow that to happen.
Here, do you have a question? You raised your hand?
They answered the question. That's the end of the conversation. Thank you.
Okay, any other comments, questions?
Thank you, appreciate it.
Okay,
Thank you for your work.
Okay. Seeing no other items before the commission,
Just before, I will
Move
say
to
that
adjourn.
we just got, week and a half ago, the jail reimbursement amount. They were late doing that this year, and it is $2,008,141. That is an increase, but then that includes the CCA corrections dollars of 168, so you subtract that. And there is no year-end deficit. They changed the way that they send the what's called supplemental. They changed that last year, so we ended up without the 366,000 that we normally would get at the end of the year, or at the beginning of the year. So the total revenue for the jail is actually down, but so is everything else, so.
What's the amount that we're down, Mr. Post? Mr. Post, what's the amount that we're down? Oh, sorry.
If you look at, well, the total revenue is $2,229,114, as opposed, no, that was, yeah, as opposed to $2,541,000, but you have to subtract the 366 that we didn't get, and then there are some other dollars that we did not get last year.
Mr. Post, I'm respectfully requesting a FOA request for the 2 videos, the workshop videos that I requested. I have received no response. So the 2 past videos, thank you.
A motion has been made to adjourn. Do we have a second? All in favor?